Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today is Thursday, April 9th, and it would be an A day. Why am I still keeping track of letter days? I think because it provides some sort of routine and a sense of normalcy in a period of time when both are severely lacking. We're going to continue talking about figurative language terms, and for today, I want to discuss two that are very frequently confused, and it's mostly because their definitions are so similar. Personification and anthropomorphism. They have incredibly similar definitions, and a lot of times personification is just used as a blanket term to cover both. So we'll start with that one. Personification, the applying of a personal nature or human characteristics to something that is inhuman, right? You're giving some short piece of human characteristic or personal behavior to an inanimate object or an animal. Now, the key to all of this is going to be looking at length and degree at which you apply those human characteristics. Typically, with personification, we are talking about a much shorter period of time, meaning the human qualities don't last. It's just a one-time event or a very significantly short period of time, or very few human characteristics, typically one or two human characteristics. So, quick example. The package of fudge stripe cookies in my cabinet are calling out to me, right? That's personification. The inanimate object in this case are the fudge stripe cookies in my cabinet, and the human quality, the human trait is calling out, right? The cookies cannot literally call out to me, hence it being figurative language, and that's a human quality. It's very short, it happens once, and it's one quality, calling out. That's personification. Now, typically, if we follow that structure or that test, it makes it much easier to understand when we're dealing with personification, right? Personification is used a lot, and that's probably part of the reason why we tend to overuse it as an explanation for which type of figurative language we're seeing. Anthropomorphism, on the other hand, is when we're applying human characteristics and behaviors to something that's not human, an animal, an inanimate object, or God. And in that case, we're typically talking about something much more long-term, right? And I don't want to confuse things, but we're talking about it in a more literal sense. So when something is being anthropomorphized, we are literally supposed to think of it as being human-like. In my personification example of the fudge stripe cookies, no one who hears that is supposed to think that the cookies are human-like or alive. Right? You're supposed to hear that and think about, wow, he must really want cookies. And if you've seen what my habits have been like, you would understand just how much I want cookies because I eat them almost nonstop. That's personification. With anthropomorphism, we as readers are supposed to understand the thing being anthropomorphized is human-like. We are supposed to accept that in a literal sense, right? So if I took those cookies and tried to switch it from personification to anthropomorphism, I would have to give it more human qualities, right, instead of just one or two, and I would have to extend the duration of it, right? I would have to push it farther, and I would have to make it in a more literal sense. So, anthropomorphize the cookies. The package of fudge stripe cookies in my cabinet is calling out to me. When I did not respond to it, it pushed open the cabinet door, hopped onto the floor, and walked itself into my office. It then climbed up my desk and sat on the corner where it is staring at me intently, praying that I would finally give in to my urges and eat the entire package. Now I am anthropomorphizing the cookies. I have given them significantly more human-like characteristics, and I have extended the usage of them, right? It has gone beyond just calling out to me. So that should hopefully make it a little easier when analyzing poetry or literature to decide, is it personification or is it anthropomorphism, right? Disney movies are the classic examples of anthropomorphism, right? When we watch The Lion King or Finding Nemo or any of those types of movies, the characters in them are being anthropomorphized. We are supposed to think of Simba and Timon and Pumbaa or Dory. We're supposed to think of them as human-like characters, right? They're not being personified, they're being anthropomorphized. They're speaking and acting like humans. So we're supposed to accept that in a literal sense. That's the big difference here. If they were being personified, we would still treat them as animals without being human-like, but doing something that's being emphasized as human-like, right? Death as a concept in literature is frequently personified. Death came calling for him, right? But it is sometimes anthropomorphized. Sometimes we see death become an actual physical character that walks alongside another character and has discussions. There's a poem by Emily Dickinson that is rather famous, Because I Could Not Stop for Death, He Kindly Stopped for Me, where, if you were to research the poem, you would see a significant piece about it being considered personification, and you may see some of it being considered anthropomorphism. And that becomes a tricky sense, right? Because the entire poem, we have lots of different human qualities being attributed to death. So it would seem on the surface to be anthropomorphized, right? Again, that test of, is it more than just one trait and how long? However, are we literally in that poem supposed to think of death as being an actual character walking with the speaker of the poem and looking at, the house, which is actually a grave? Are we supposed to think of them as a humanistic character? So that becomes a difficult one. Most of the online analysis or literary analysis you see, it will refer to it as personification. So because we're not supposed to literally think of death as a human-like character in there. So it can still be a little tricky even with that test, although for the most part, it should help you out. Now, hopefully this short little, 8 to 9 minute long video makes it just slightly easier to read this, to understand it, and to, start to process how these two terms are used. If you have any questions, of course, leave a comment or reach out to me via email. I hope that all of these videos are helping you. I hope that you are all well and making it through this whole social distancing and distance learning process as best as you possibly can. I will keep making these videos for as long as we don't have normal classes, in the hopes that they give you just like counting out the letter days, some tiny shred of normalcy. Even if normally in class I don't have those types of things behind me, although in my classroom I do have an abnormally large amount of cat posters. Until next time, please be well and try to stay positive. Always, persevere, and there'll be another one tomorrow. Be good.